The last piece of your ukulele is the bridge. Now I'm going to give you the bridge so that you can have it so it matches the neck. So we always want these two to be the same. And I give you another piece that we use for the nut that's up here. Now the nice thing is it's the same piece. We don't need to cut it at all. It should fit right in the slot that's already made, and it does. Remember, we do not glue this in. This is just in freely. It just sits and the strings go across the top, as you can see here. But what I wanted to show you is on the very end, when you put the strings in, they actually go into some half round holes that we're going to use a drill press. Then we simply cut some slots for it to wrap around in. We just knot up the strings so it kind of cinches tight. So I'm going to lay that aside. This is one of the boards that we use. This is a piece of scrap. This is junk that I found. It has one flat edge. You can see that it's already been used once to drill those holes. There are half holes here. I can't just take this board to the drill press and drill a half circle. It just doesn't work. It'll wander off to the side. However, if I clamp these two together really tight and drill right in the middle of the two boards, I'll get a half hole on each one. That's how these are made. So since I can't use that area again, I can simply shift it down to another area or grab another board. It's all fine. But you need to make sure, first of all, where the holes go. Opposite this line, this side, on the back side. Okay, so make sure you put it down so it looks like this. This hole is facing out and it's on the down side. Your goal is to clamp these together as absolutely flush on top as you can. And I found that these bigger clamps work best. They hold it nice and tight. And right there, nice and tight, that's perfectly flush. And we'll put the other side on here. And the piece I chose, piece of wood, might be a little bit too long, but that's okay. It's just got to hold it in place. Is that flush? Good. Nice and tight. So now I can actually hold the clamps while it's drilling. Now all I need to know is where to drill the holes. So ask me for this template. It says bridge slot template. So it even shows the cut right there, and here's the slots. So I'm just going to put it up right against it. It should be the same length. And there we go. And mark where those cuts go so they're evenly spaced. Right there. Okay. Now we go to the drill press. We're back at the drill press, and the bit that goes in here is the 1/4 inch Forstner bit. It looks like this. This is the next size up. So 1/4 inch Forstner bit. And it has a very sharp brad point tip, so it's going to go in. It's a little easier to line up. How deep you go, we're going to go to the bottom edge of the top section. You see how about a 1/4 inch of this is shiny? We're going to go into the base of that, so that deep. Now the 1/4 inch one's a little shorter than this, but you get the idea. So the bit's already in there, and to keep it from having to go up and down so far, there's a little latch on the side of the machine that if I lift it up, now it stays. Don't worry about that. That's something that I do, and if you don't like it, that's okay. So now you got to line it up, and you got to be very careful that the tip goes right in between the two boards. If you want to use the light, that's fine. I sometimes do, sometimes don't, but it's not, the camera has a hard time seeing it sometimes if it's on, but we'll give it a shot. Pull out the red switch and go down, and I go down a little and then look. Is that the right place? Yes. Take your time to the top edge of the head of the cutter, and then go back up, slide it down, and do it again. There's a little wood in there, you just tap, and it comes right out. Now remember, I'm not holding this down. You've got to be careful to hold it flat, straight up and down. That's kind of important. That in the right place? Yes. Go ahead and come down. Right there. Slide it down to the next one. Last one. Good, and you're done. Now when we take these off, again, we've got our half holes there and our half holes there, and they're evenly spaced. Now that we've got the holes drilled, we need to go to the bandsaw and cut the slots, but we need to know how far down. The easiest way is simply to measure down 1/4 of an inch. You know, take your tape measure, measure 1/4 of an inch down right there, and use something straight. I still have this template here, and just draw a line so you kind of know where to stop, and that's about right. If it's a little bit off, it's not a big deal, but I'd rather it be too shallow than too deep. Also, we want to make sure that they're all cut evenly. Even if your holes are a hair off, these need to look good. So we just kind of put a mark right above that line I put on so I know where to cut with the bandsaw. Now we take this bridge, and this is the template that you're gonna get. Okay, it's still got all the frets on it so you can kind of see how it lays. But I need this to fit inside this slot, and it's just a little bit too big. So I'm simply gonna take this to the sander in the back and just sand it down till it fits in. I don't want it super loose, it's not the end of the world, but I'd like it to fit snugly in there. So I'd take both of them with you, and as soon as it's sanded and fits in the hole, that's it. Now take a look at this bridge. I took the ends and kind of beveled them down a little bit so it's not this blocky end at all. And so we need to know where that ends. Well, that's simply done. Now that the bridge fits, I set it in there and I center it, put it in the middle. Then I can take a pencil and I can draw a line on each end. I don't want to bevel any further than that edge. You may have to draw it on the top, wherever you want to draw it so that you can sand it in place. Now we'll just take it back to my sander and kind of bevel that freehand. Now be careful as you're sanding, you don't want to wobble back and forth. I'll show you right now. So over here at the belt sander, or you could use the disc sander, which would sand faster, but you got to be careful. I'm just going to use a belt sander. I can see the line that I put on, and I can go from the edge of that corner of that line to that corner. I don't necessarily need to make it sharp, but at least beveled down. What I meant was don't wobble this way as you're sanding. You got to keep it as straight as you can. Make sure to move it left and right. This is very hard wood. It's going to be easy to burn my belt. There. So I've sanded to that line I made. It's not sharp, but it is beveled down. Flip it around, do the same thing on the other side. You know if you're wobbling it, if the line here is crooked. If it's way off, then you know that you were pushing too hard on one side or the other. Try to sand that as straight as you can, then we'll sand off the lines, the scratches that the belt sander made here by hand. Now that those scratches are gone, take your regular sandpaper and just soften the sharp edges everywhere. Sand off your pencil lines as well. The other thing you may do if you want is the bridge sits like that, and I like to chamfer off the very corners, outside corners of this, just a little bit. I like the look, so it's not a square. The very last part that we have to actually glue on and really clamp into place is the bridge. Now we've got it all set and sanded, it's ready to go. So this is labeled bridge placement jig. So what we're going to do, the 12th fret, line that up with the 12th fret, which should be the top edge of the body, and clamp it into place gently. You don't need to be super tough with it, but it needs to be straight. The key on this jig is making it not only the right distance from the frets, but also straight all the way down so it looks correct. Okay, nice and straight. You always want 2 clamps to make sure that stays in the right spot. Okay, right there. And there we go. So let me flip this around. There we go. Now we can kind of see what we're doing. So it's perfectly lined up, and now that I know that this fits into this slot, it's as simple as put it in the slot, that's where it goes. So that's why this is such an important jig. So make sure that's straight. So all I really have to do is put a little glue on the bottom of my bridge and then glue it down into place. Please remember the direction, that it does not go this way. It's got to go this way. The holes I drilled and the slots have got to face away from where you want it, from the strings, I should say, so I can knot it and pull. So on the other side, put glue everywhere, including in between each of the holes. We want a nice glue joint everywhere. Spread it out like we always do. And if anything squeezes out here, it's the same. I'll get a wet paper towel and take care of it as soon as you can. Okay, there we go. We'll wipe that off my fingers. Because again, I'm trying not to touch any of the bare wood with wet fingers or glue. Okay, flip it around. Put it in place, right there. And I can kind of shift it left or right so I can feel the end of this should be the exact same width as this piece here. So all I have to do now is just press it down into place. Just a touch, there we go. Now I would hold it down for a good 30 seconds to a minute, and then we're gonna put a clamp here and here. Now you have to be very careful. If I'm clamping on, here, there's nothing here bracing it, not like the sides where I have the side kind of holding it apart. If I clamp too hard in the middle, I'm just gonna shatter my, my ukulele. So please be very gentle. It doesn't need a lot of pressure to stay in place, to hold it down while the glue dries. So I'm just giving it pressure for long enough until it stays in place and I can kind of move the bridge out of the way, this part, so then I can clamp it down. After that, this can be moved out of the way if you want. If multiple people need it, of course, we got to spread the love a little bit so we can pull it off. But that's why I'm holding it so it'll stay long enough so I can clamp it and take this off. So we'll wait about a minute and then I'll clamp it up. All right. All right, that's it. We have the clamps on. Again, we'll take a wet paper towel and scrub out any glue. If you need the awl again, some with a sharp point, that's fine. But if we can get it out now, it'll save you some time later. Now we just let that dry. Then after some final sanding, we're ready for finish.